Hi guys, I'm here to present to you a topic of grammar from chapter 10, and it's going to be short and sweet because it has to do with the irregular verb EO. I'm right here on page 225 of your textbook, so if you want to have your textbook open on this page or maybe look at it after we have covered this together right now, that might be a good place to start going. So, the verb EO is a very common verb in the Latin language. It means to go, and you can tell that in the English language it's a very common verb as well. Therefore, when you have a common verb, you have noticed that very often it turns out to be an irregular verb. And that's the case for this verb in Latin as well. Look at the principal part of EO. EO, ire, EV, or EE, and itus. In your book it says itum, depends on the book we are using for that fourth principal part, but same idea. What you see in these principal parts right away is that they don't follow a lovely pattern like a first conjugation, laudo, laudare, laudavi, laudatum. That's not the case right here because it is an irregular verb. So if you look at these principal parts, what's interesting is from the third principal part, you have two possibilities for the perfect tense. EV, that would conjugate as EV, EVST, EVIT, EVMUS, EVSTIS, IERUNT, or IVERUNT, that you see right below over here. However, if you were to use that second option for the principal part, for the third principal part right here, you would end up with a perfect as EE, EEST, that actually combined into ISTI, as the note says right here, IIT, IMUS, ISTIS, IERUNT. You see that that V is dropped. This thing right here, that we have two options for the third principal part, is very important because it will have some consequences for many tenses. Because you know that on the third principal part, you form all the tenses of the perfect system. That is the perfect, the pluperfect, the future perfect of all of the indicative and of the subjunctive. So it's important for you to note that. And if you look at the conjugation of the tenses that I just mentioned, pluperfect, future perfect, and so on, you see that they either can be formed on the first option of the stem, IV plus the ending, ivera, iveras, or ivero, iveris, and also you can use it without the V. The stem is simply the letter I, yeram, yeras, yerat, and so on and so forth. So that's something that is very important for us to know. Okay. Also, if you go to your book on page 225, what you find out is the subjunctive does exist for the verb to go. It exists, and if you look at the bottom of page 225, eam, eas, eat, eamus, eatis, eant is a subjunctive present of this irregular verb. You must know that verb too. If you look at the verb eamus, the form eamus on page 225, that's the form that the Romans would use to say, let's go. And that would be very commonly used. If you move over to page 226, you have the rest of the conjugation of this verb with the imperfect indicative, ibam, ibas, ibat, ibamus, ibatis, ibant, that you have on this chart right here as well. And something that you have on page 226 but not right here on your screen is the subjunctive imperfect. That is formed regularly by taking the second principal part and adding endings to it. That's the second chart on page 226. Irem, ires, iret, iremus, iretis, irant. No problem. The future, ibo, ibis, ibit, ibimus, ibitis, ibunt. When you look at the endings of the future, it seems like the verb EO follows somewhat of a model of a second conjugation. Not surprising, because if you look at the first principal part, EO is oftentimes a sign, or all the time, a sign of a second conjugation. All right. The rest of the conjugation is there on page 226 and 227. So it is for you to do, to memorize, and also do the exercises that are related to it. And that takes us to your workbook. And if you go to your workbook chapter 10, on page 56, page 56, chapter 10 of your workbook, you are responsible to do exercise 1 on that page 56 of your workbook. Also, when we meet again, I will quiz you and I will test you on your memorization of the page 225, 226, and 227 of this irregular verb EO, ire, EE, and itus. Alright, so I'll see you then. Goodbye.